Well, hi everyone. I think we are live now. We'll be getting started in just a couple of minutes as we're waiting for more people to join in the next few minutes. And I would say, while we wait for everyone to join, let me give you a quick preview of what we'll cover today. We'll be diving into one of the biggest challenges in e commerce, which is product data. It's such a crucial piece for organizing and selling collections, but also one of the biggest pain points. For example, attributes, titles, description, all of these are must haves for any brand selling online. And they're still created manually by content teams, buyers, or merchandisers. And as you know, creating product data takes a lot of time. So I would say, with all the buzz around AI and the possibilities to automate this process, there's one question we keep hearing from both brands and retailers. Should we build our own AI product data solution or buy a ready-made from one vendor that has a specialized solution for product data? We have a guest today that brings over 25 years of experience across both sides of the table, from senior merchandising roles at major retailers to consulting on transformative and technology projects with brands like All Saints, Nike, and ASOS. This will be an interactive session, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat at any point, and we'll pick them up and answer. It looks like there's more people joining in now, so I would say let's kick off, and I would again say hello everyone, and welcome to another session of AI and e-commerce talks. I'm Svetlana, founder and CEO of Pixyle AI, and I'm happy to have you with us today. If this is your first time joining our webinar series, we explore how AI is transforming the way e commerce businesses operate, focusing on brands and retailers. We feature real stories from leaders who are using AI to solve practical challenges, not only have AI as a buzz. And as I mentioned earlier, today topics will be all about product data and how to best tackle the challenges that come with it. In the fashion and retail world, product data powers everything: e commerce, assortment planning, and customer experiences. And yet, many companies still struggle with manual process around it, and also with inconsistent data, which is so important. When it comes to scaling operations, whether that's improving efficiency, speeding up time to market, or making product data more consistent, the rise of AI tools brings up a key questions with brands and retailers. And one of them is, do we build our own solution in house or buy one from a specialized provider for product data? And I'm really happy to introduce today Charlotte. She's the vice chair, managing partner, and director for EMEA at Columbus Consulting. And Charlotte has a proven track record of helping brands and retailers transform their operations through data driven strategies, and also hands on experience in both building and implementing solutions and the change management that comes with it. There will be a question and answering at the end of the session, but feel free to ask questions throughout while we talk, and then we'll answer as many as we can. I will first do a quick personal introduction before we begin. I will start, and then I'll hand it over to Charlotte. I'm Svetlana. I'm the founder and CEO of Pixyle AI. My background is in artificial intelligence. I completed my PhD at the University of Amsterdam, and afterwards started Pixel to help brands, retailers, and marketplaces improve product data quality through AI and image processing. We've seen firsthand how poor filters and also incomplete data slow down the businesses, and actually, AI can now help solve these problems at scale. And now I would like to give the microphone to Charlotte. Charlotte, can you please introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, thanks, Svetlana. Hi, I'm Charlotte Kula-Przezwanski. As Svetlana said, I'm the Vice Chair and Managing Partner at Columbus Consulting. I've been with Columbus since 2013. As Svetlana said before that, I worked in merchandise. I live in the middle of England, so I've done the whole Bermuda Triangle of Adams Children's Wear, George Next, and those. But since working with Columbus, I've worked with a number of retailers, as Svetlana talked about. Obviously, with my background in fashion, I've worked with a lot of fashion retailers like ASOS and All Saints and Reeds. But then also currently we're working with Dunelm, and we've helped Halfords and Swarovski, and so quite a few other players as well. But with Columbus, we are completely vendor agnostic, but we are very excited and interested in new vendors on the market, which is why we're really excited, and I'm really excited to be on the webinar today with Pixel, because I think that, having been in retail, I understand how hard the world is of retail, and if there are tools out there that can help people, and especially with AI embedded in and where that's going, we're being asked a lot to provide retailers with vendors that they should go and look at. And so I was very interested in Pixel. We held a breakfast briefing back in June with Svetlana and the team, and that was very positive. And so this is carrying on that series, that we just want to get the message out there, really, that there are these types of tools, especially around product data. It was the bane of my life to do it, but also with all the customers that we work with. So many people have, I don't know, I'm going to say hundreds of attributes, as well as trying to put their products onto marketplaces like the Next platform or Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis or Selfridges, and the format that they want all that data in, as well as your own website, and making sure that's SEO optimized. I think there's a huge opportunity to try and streamline that process and get much more efficient, and that's where tools can do it. Or obviously there is the option to build yourself, and that's what we'll talk about today.
Yes, great intro, Charlotte. And indeed, you have so much experience, and I'm so happy to have you today to share your knowledge with our audience. And indeed, we did held a breakfast briefing in London, and but I really liked that afterwards, a lot of the people joining actually shared that they felt like it's a therapy session, because they all shared their challenges with product data, and actually it looked like that it's a common problem across the industry, because everybody just thinking it's a problem that they have. And it was really nice to hear directly from retail fashion professionals about the chaos that unstructured data can bring, both, as you mentioned, inconsistent tags, attributes over hundreds, but also different teams filling them in, and they're not always consistent across platforms, and also missing attributes. And all this, as you mentioned, is really important to sell on different digital channels for different retailers, and all the pain that comes with restructuring data. So, Charlotte, based on the discussion and your own experience working with retailers, where do you see the biggest challenges with product data today?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think people are realizing that if they want to start harnessing AI tools, whether that's building some themselves or buying something, your data has to be in the right place. We know from our own personal experience of putting things in Copilot or ChatGPT that if you put rubbish in, it doesn't give you a very good answer out.
Yes.
And I thought it was very interesting at our breakfast briefing, Svetlana, that you had Depop there, who obviously are a customer. And I suppose I hadn't realized that actually Depop relies on all of us, the general public, to upload good pictures and good attribution. And we're very bad at it. But they very quickly put products on the website. And yet retailers that we speak to might take 2 or 3 weeks to try and get a product on a website, because they think the attribution's got to be perfect, which it should be to help with SEO optimization. But it shows how hard the attribution is of the product. And I think there's also the timeliness. If you think most buying teams, who really are the custodian of a lot of those attributes, are buying 9-10 months before the season. But actually then when the product launches, it's only, they need all the data 6 weeks before. But by then the product teams have moved to the next season. and they can't remember. So if they haven't filled it in at the time, it's very hard to go back and retrospectively fill it in. We worked with a lingerie retailer recently. I did a master data management project with them, and product data around the business was in 59 different spreadsheets, because there was wholesale, there was e-com, there was the buying team, there was digital, there were so many different people wanting that product data. And it was all stored in many separate different spreadsheets, and was obviously, even for the same product, it could be different. And so products were launching on the website with inconsistent data. Products being sent to wholesale partners had inconsistent data. And so I think that the challenge is the accuracy and the timeliness of the data, and how quickly wholesale partners or marketplace partners want the information, as well as your own digital and website teams. And I think that using, whether you, as I said, whether you build it yourself or buy, if you starting to use AI to try and clean up that data, that's the best thing you can do. But as you said at our breakfast briefing, it felt like therapy. Most people had the same challenges, and it was around the consistency and also how quickly they could output the data to all the third parties that needed it, so they could sell the product as accurately as they could.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely a very big challenges that they have. And you mentioned you worked on this project that they had so many spreadsheets and data being spread out, and you helped them with it. What is I'm curious, like, what is the first approach when they see the challenges with product data that both brands and retailers start thinking about? What is like, does AI come to mind? Do they think of hiring more people? Do they think of creating even a larger master sheet, or getting another tool? What do you see as discussions among the industry?
Yeah, I think people realize that where they are is not probably where they should be. And I think that, as we talked about at the breakfast briefing, I think that people thought, well, surely there must be solutions that can help with this. This isn't a hard problem,
Yeah.
to clean up your data. Why is it so tricky? And it was interesting that the guy from Depop didn't understand why it took retailers 2 to 3 weeks to put a product on a website, when all of us, the general public, are loading things onto eBay and Depop and Vinted every single day. And 4 million products were loaded onto Depop in a day, and no one worries so much. And so I think that it's hard. I think they do realize that solutions have got to be the answer, that technology should be the answer. Actually putting people to it, or just doing better spreadsheets. No one tries to make a mistake. So
Oh,
humans don't try to make a mistake. So why is it that all this data is in so many different places? And actually, if you systemize it and make it consistent, then that's surely got to be the winning. And I think a lot of CEOs are hearing the buzzwords of AI.
yeah.
And so a lot of it, when they see they go on the website themselves, they go on their website, see the data not as good as it should be. And then they say to the teams, well, why can't we use
Yeah.
some AI tools to try and clean this up? Surely it's just a manual task, and it's easy. And so I think some of this is now coming from the top, of
Okay.
saying, we can't just stay where we are. We can't stay on spreadsheets. We can't stay with inconsistent data. We've got to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Honestly, we've also heard it. Just last week, we had actually a call, and the person said, I actually got a requirement from the board and the management team to start looking at AI and how we can, make process more efficient. So I think it's really good that there is more awareness now around how it can help and digitalize. Well, great that you mentioned about the, CEOs talking about it. Then my next question would be, when you, based on your experience and what you see the talks coming from the industries, how do you see stakeholders aligning on the decision whether they should buy a ready solution or build it themselves? Are there any strategies to help bring everyone on board on this decision?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I think a year ago, the answer would have been different probably, because I
Yeah.
think there weren't those, or maybe 2 years ago, AI was only really coming in. And so,
Mhm.
especially with some of the more traditional solutions like an allocation and replenishment solution or an assortment planning solution, no one would have thought of building something themselves
Yeah.
because they wouldn't have had the tools or the capability. And if tools are out there and companies have spent, you know, 5, 10, 15 years building solutions, why try and build it yourself? But
Mhm.
interestingly, I do see differences in conversations in the board, and especially with CIOs, of saying, well, if there are all these tools out there, large language models
Yeah.
and ChatGPT and even software companies are using these types of tools to develop their own software more quickly, why
Mhm.
can't a retailer develop their own software, especially if they think they're quite unique, they think they've got quite a unique business process. They might think, well, we can be in control of our own destiny if we do it ourselves. We're not having to be reliant on a third party. A third party
Mhm.
might get bought, the market might change, they might go
Mhm.
bust. So actually, I've never heard that debate happen too much before, of build or buy,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
now I'm coming across it a lot more, and CEOs are questioning that a lot more. I mean, historically, retailers didn't want to be software companies, although some of them do. ASOS in particular, and Urban, someone like Urban, think they're a technology house as much as they are a retailer.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of them would want to build their own software. Next, in particular, Next has always built its own software. So there are retailers out there that historically have always built, but I think it's now really coming back onto the table that it would be our intellectual property. If we build it ourselves, we'll be in control, we can tailor it. But I just think that's becoming part of the vendor selection process. I think they're still
Mhm.
going out and doing a selection process, and we're involved in a lot of selection processes at
Mhm.
the moment. So I think that that's just another option in the selection process. They might look at 4 or 5 vendors and then also maybe give their
Mhm.
IT team an opportunity to build a proof of concept and see what they can do along the same side.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all of those are valid reasons. And as you say, there are so many now opportunities and LLMs that, of course, it comes to mind. Okay, should we build it or, look for vendors? And it's just, one of the option, as you say. Um, Based on your experience and what you've seen with vendors deciding to build a solution, whether it's for product data, whether it's for an ERP solution or a PIM solution, what do you have seen as a success? Does usually building your own solution, and you also mentioned some of the retailers or brands being very digital, is there a good practice versus a bad practice, or is it depends?
I think it really depends, and it really depends on your IT team and the
Yeah.
skills you have within your IT team, or whether you'll, get contractors in to do it. Gosh, a long time ago, maybe 8 to 10 years ago, we were working with All Saints, and at that point, they wanted to have an order management system that could basically be used by the stores to actually fulfill customer orders from the store. And at that point, those types of systems were in their infancy, and they had a homegrown ERP anyway that they'd built. So they had developers in house. And so we helped them build an in-house solution. But at that point, they did know it was tactical. They just needed to have something very quick. They wanted to offer that service to the customer, that
Mhm.
they could get a product quickly. A bit like, I suppose, the whole Uber Eats and Bike, they wanted to be like the entertainer is. They wanted to be able to offer 30-minute pickup, and they wanted
Yeah.
to do that quite quickly. And so they developed an in-house system that basically showed customer orders to the store. The store quickly confirmed whether they had the stock. The stock was picked by the store, and the customer could come in and pick it
Oh,
up.
nice.
But it was a very tactical solution. It was a cheap solution. And they
Mhm.
knew that as order management systems progressed, they would probably go out and third party and buy it. So it was much more of a tactical fit. And I think that that's sometimes where build works. You've got a need, you want to offer something to your consumers quickly. But I
Mhm.
think that you know, there are also instances where build or I'm going to say maybe buying a platform. Some people quite like to buy a platform and
Mhm.
then build it themselves, which I suppose is sort of a semi-build.
Yeah.
I think with those as well, the trouble that you get into sometimes when you build it yourself is if you're not really strict with yourself and have a
Mhm.
really defined goal and a defined output, and especially if you're trying to replicate something that you had in house, you make it really complicated. And you're
Yeah.
not taking into account industry best practice. You're not
Yeah.
taking into account vendor experience. You're not being part of a community. I think the great thing that the buy option gives you is you suddenly become part of a really great community.
Um,
And retail can feel a bit competitive. Like I've worked with Reese and All Saints, they probably count themselves as competitive, but actually when they're in user forums for software that they've both bought, it's sort of a private room where you can chat about your challenges and your legacy systems and your spaghetti of integration and all those things. And so I really like the fact that actually one of the great options about buying is it does bring you that community of people who have done it together and a great roadmap. You know,
I,
if you're a retailer, you're focused on retailing. You're not a software vendor. And so the stuff, if you build it yourself, you've either got to decide it's tactical, or if it's there for the long term, you've got to keep it supported, you've got to keep it up to date, you've got to keep it maintained. So it might initially cost you more in the instance, but you've got to really keep up with the latest technology. And so you've got to have some really decent people in your IT team, which is slightly different from just being a retailer, whereas software vendors will have a whole roadmap planned, a community that feeds into that roadmap.
yeah, yeah. Well, those are all really great tips and stories. And you mentioned, there's technology, but it also should align with the tactics and the strategy. So basically, having this very large decision whether you should build or buy should come from a strategic point of view. What is it that we want to achieve? Will it shift our focus towards the solution instead of retailing? So, what would be your tips to, let's say, all the decision makers that are joining now, in terms of, okay, when you look at making this decision, what kind of strategic point of view you should have in order to make this decision?
Yeah, I think strategy wise, I think it's around the control, the IP, the privacy. If there are those
Mhm.
very I suppose retail, especially with the cyber attack on Marks and Spencers, retailers are worried about,
Mhm.
the control and the governance. And if they build it themselves, it's not a third party piece of software that could be attacked. But I think what we always suggest to retailers is you've got to think about the use cases, and you've got to be really clear on the use case that you're trying to solve, and understand the benefits of solving that and working out whether the build option or the buy option is a better scenario for those use cases. But have that business process and have those use cases defined. And we work with a brand where the CEO had said, I want to put tablets in store and it's going to increase sales by 10%. That's a very, very high level generic use case that at
Yeah,
that point in time, I mean, this is quite a long time ago when there wasn't much assisted selling, but it's having those very definitive set of use cases that one can be used in vendor selection to make sure you pick the right vendor.
yeah,
And secondly, as I said, you could decide to give your IT team a try and see what they can build as a proof of concept. But I think that I would always suggest that you have those use cases. The other thing that really came out at the Columbus conference on the 11th of September, we had a whole panel on innovation at that conference, is whichever option you take, do the test and try. Don't make the project a 9-12 month, which is historically what they were. I mean, ERPs are like 2 or 3 years, but even allocation, replenishment, and merchandise financial planning can be 9 to 12 months product life cycle. But now I think everyone's looking at agility. Everyone's looking at trying to see what works. And especially I know with Pixel, just try it, do a test, try, see
Mm.
how it works. And, and, and it doesn't matter about making mistakes. You learn
Yeah.
from your mistakes. And also when you start implementing these types of tools, I do actually think it forces you to clean up the data. Back in
Mhm.
the day when we used to implement merchandise financial tools and whizzes, as soon as you put your data in a whizzy, you see it's fairly inaccurate, especially something like your purchase orders. You want to see week on week where your purchase orders are, and you realize actually that a lot of them are overdue because a whizzy will always put it in the first week. And it's the same if you run your product data through Pixel. You would soon see, and Pixel would tell you quite quickly where you're where you need to clean up. And so I think try it, don't be afraid of trying it, try and test.
Yeah, in the startup world, there's this saying, "fail fast," right? Just
Yeah.
because this is how you will also learn fast. And we've seen this also with brands and retailers. I think there is a really nice movement around this shift of mindset, and that's why we say, okay, don't we work with yearly contracts, but test it for the 3 months, and that's why we added, for example, an opt-out period, so everybody can try it in 3 months. They come to the conclusion, okay, we clean our data, and just the 3 months of a trial period, I think it's perfect. We've seen is the perfect time frame instead of doing yearly tests. 3 months is a perfect quick test, getting people on board, seeing how it works. So I really love that there is this mindset shift now. And okay, so I have another question regarding timing. What we see is that you mentioned, fashion retailers are constantly, under pressure to sell more or to get products online more quickly. How do you think that this urgency influences the build versus buy decision? Do companies often make trade offs between speed and control, and how do they navigate that?
Yeah, it's hard. I think that people probably initially think that if they build it themselves, it'll be quicker,
Yeah,
which is a misnomer, really, because if you think, Pixel have been around, did you say 7 years is
yeah,
since you started? So you've had 7 years at it. So why would a retailer think, in 3 months they could build something?
yeah,
But sometimes there is that belief that surely if we do it ourselves and if we've got the technical capabilities, we can build something quickly. I
yeah,
think you can build something quickly. All Saints prove that with their fabric solution for order management. But
yeah,
I think that it was a very, very small use case and it was very quick to do. But you have to be very determined and very prioritized about what you're going to do. And you really have to have the skills in house. So
yeah,
I think that the buy option, I think again, probably in some executives' heads, people think that buying a piece of software, the procurement of it takes time,
mhm,
the implementation takes time. Every CIO and every CEO has probably got a few battle scars from implementation, especially ERP implementations that were long. And, if you think of trying to put SAP in or Dynamics 365 or any of those big ERP solutions, it's sort of heart and lung surgery. And so in their heads, probably emotionally, they think that going out to buy something, you're relying on someone else, not yourself, to deliver. And that's where the community and the proof comes in. I think as part of that decision making process, speaking to other people that have done this before and that sort of therapy session,
yeah,
like we heard from Depop at the breakfast event, how quickly it got in, how quickly you see the results. And as you said, in that first 3 months, these days, startup companies in particular, like yourself, are very agile. And as you said, it's about failing fast. I think larger companies and back in the day, people would have been worried about failure.
mhm,
But now I think that that try and test is much more in the psyche of people.
yeah,
And therefore, I personally believe it's a personal belief, but we test it out with the retailers that actually some of this new software out there is so quick and so fast to implement and helps you actually clean up your data as it's doing it. Why wouldn't you go with the buy option?
Yeah, yeah, and great that you also mentioned that you need to have to rely on a team, right? I remember when we started talking about this topic, you did share one case study where there were like four people in the development team, and then you rely for a project on two, and all of a sudden both of them leave, and then you're left without no project, a half cooked project. You need to hire new people. Where when you have a vendor, they deal with all these things. So yeah, so that was, yeah, great that you mentioned the team, because I think that's a very high important point in the decision making.
Yeah, and building code is hard. You've got, I mean, yes, you can use some, support and some AI now, but for someone else to take on someone else's code, if they leave, you really do have single points of failure. It's very, very hard to amend it. And for us, it's the same with spreadsheets. We've done projects where and actually, when I worked in software, we delivered a solution to George Clothing. This is a long time ago, and when we were doing the user acceptance testing, they kept on saying your software's wrong, and we were like, it isn't. Honestly, it really isn't. And what we proved was the spreadsheets that they'd been working with for 13 years had errors in them, because they were trying to test the software against the spreadsheets, but it was actually the spreadsheets that had been wrong in all that time, and they didn't realize. And it can be the same with homegrown systems, but that's also why I would suggest people try and get off spreadsheets as quickly as they can, because again, a spreadsheet is just as much like, to be honest, a spreadsheet is like building a piece of software yourself. Some of the I'm in awe of some people's Excel skills, that they can build these amazing things in Excel. I wasn't an Excel guru when I was a merchandiser at all. I had people in my team who were, or I just decided to go and buy some software because I was a trader. I wasn't an Excel person. And you see some of these Excel sheets that people have got, and you're like, how did you even build that? It is like a piece of software. But again, you say to people, well, what's that calc? And they go, I don't know. Fred wrote that. I don't know what it
Yeah,
is, and then Fred's left or gone away, and you're left with no one really knows how the spreadsheet works anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, but at least, as you said, with a piece of software, it's on your ownership to make sure that you can train and deliver it, and it's built, sensibly, and it can be replicated and it continue its life.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that you mentioned the spreadsheet. I remember when we were onboarding a client last year, when they shared the spreadsheet with us. Honestly, I was also not aware all the things that you can do in Excel. It felt like code, and so many spreadsheets connected with formulas, and so many dependencies between fields. Like it took us, a month to untangle, okay, everything that we need to integrate in the software. But yeah, and I've
Well, and
heard.
link spreadsheets and shared spreadsheets. I remember when we were working with George back in the day, they actually got Microsoft in, and Microsoft went, I can't believe what you've done with Excel. We didn't know it can do half of that.
Oh, that's really nice that Microsoft said, people
Yeah,
from
they were.
Microsoft
I
said,
mean, this is like 15 years ago,
yeah.
so Excel was, not like it is today, but they were
Mm.
impressed with what George had managed to achieve.
I remember on the session in London a few months ago, when somebody said if Excel or Microsoft goes down, the whole fashion retail industry will go down. There's so much dependency on Excel sheets and all the product data and all other data being there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, especially in merchandising, which I'm from. Obviously, it's our comfort blanket, and
Yeah.
merchandisers like control. And if they can control a spreadsheet, but also as well, the thing that we found when we've been implementing systems in the change management in particular, when you
Yeah.
go from an Excel thing, which obviously, unless you've protected it all, most people could add a column, hide a column. No one knows, what's in
Ah.
there. Add a formula, change a formula. Suddenly, you get to a piece of software where they can't tweak things. The
Yeah.
change management element becomes quite interesting, and at least for a bit, they try and keep the Excel spreadsheet as their comfort blanket before they run the two systems in parallel before they move onto the system and get the trust. It's all about trust. That's
Yeah.
what they trust their Excel spreadsheet, even though I think a lot of them don't know how some of it's worked, even if they inherit it. But
Yeah.
that change management element is interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people from the audience now can really connect to what we are saying. Okay, so going back to the topic of build or buy, I'm curious in your very yearly and long experience working in fashion retail. Have you seen actually examples of let's say decisions being made to build and then seeing the things don't go well and then they go and in the vendor selection process or vice versa?
Yeah, I think obviously coming from Next, we
Yeah.
were a build, and I was actually, which is why I sort of went into software. I was on a systems working party, and I what they did was they had business people like me. I represented women's wear, but there was one for
Mhm.
menswear and homeware and kids. And we basically, as well as doing our day trading job, we represented the business as to what we wanted the solution to be. And we came up with all the use cases. But, this is a long time ago. I was a merchandiser a long time ago. And at that point, there weren't a huge amount of software options, especially not like there is today.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Next went for the buy option. But it was bumpy, and it wasn't always smooth. What I would say is you have to bring in a consistent process, whether you're on the build or buy route. But I think that the thing about building it, as we've talked about already, is actually you think it's quicker and easier, but the cost
Mhm.
of maintaining, the cost of upgrading, I've seen a lot of examples where people have decided to build their own, or
Mhm.
I suppose customize a platform, which you might as well say, All Saints ERP is an external ERP, but they've customized it. And if you look at the Microsoft stack, because it's a
Mhm.
platform, you could, I mean, there are, if you looked at three different versions of D365, they'd all be very different because you can customize it quite a lot yourself, even though you're buying the platform. So
Yeah.
I think some of those are very similar to buying. But where I've seen successful deployments go in is very much
Mhm.
as we've talked about already, is do them quick. If you're going to
Mhm.
use a third party system, really hone in on your use cases. Also
Mhm.
try and think about a minimum viable product. Don't try and, what's the phrase, boil the ocean. Don't try and think of all the possibilities that this new swanky thing could do. Really
Mhm.
focus on the immediacy of the use cases, because the change management in any organization is hard, whether you build it or buy it.
Yeah.
I suppose people think probably with building it, the change management would be easier because
Yeah.
you'll be building something that's familiar to the users, but you won't be taking advantage of industry best practice at that point. And
Mhm.
we've seen a lot of retailers actually want to buy an external solution to actually get people off some of their old ways of working
Mhm.
and actually adopt a new way of working. And that's quite hard to do without a system or when you're building your own, because the users go, well, we've always done it this way. Why can't you just build me something the way we've always done it?
Yeah.
So I think that the freshness that a new system from outside, a system that's been used by a lot of other retailers, you can say to the teams, look, this is being used by retailer X, Y, and Z. They're
Yeah.
our competitors, and they use it very successfully. And if, when we were working with
Mhm.
a couple of retailers who had got very old systems or very old spreadsheets, and they were thinking about looking at a solution, one of the things I
Mhm.
said to the CEO was, all your competitors have these solutions and you're still on spreadsheets or some homegrown system, and you're losing your competitive edge because you're not giving the
Yeah.
teams the tools they need to do. And at our conference, one panel was on innovation and one panel was on talent and Gen Z and bringing talent into the business. And one of the great speakers we had was Dr. Courtney from Manchester University. And
Yeah.
we were asking her how retail courses at universities are changing
Mhm.
to teach, and they want to get people industry ready at uni so that they can become a buyer or become a designer. And so
Mhm.
they've actually, on the uni courses, they use a lot of tools on the uni courses, and then quite a few people go into retail, and when they contact her afterwards and say, it's great, I landed a job in retail after getting a degree at Manchester, but they haven't got half the tools we had on the course. I feel like I've gone backwards. I'm back onto spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of these new people coming into the industry are
Yeah.
expecting the tools, and you're not going to retain the talent if they feel they've gone backwards and they're back on spreadsheets. And you know that was true in my day. We were very fortunate at Next because we had systems, and then Next people got poached, and when they went to other
Mm.
retailers that didn't have systems, they felt they were back in the dark ages.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of thinking of whether you're going to buy, a big positive is that a lot of these new people that you want to attract into retail, maybe on their uni courses, have used these types of solutions and expect it when they get there. They do expect to use Copilot and ChatGPT when they're, or those types of tools when they're
Yeah.
in their job. I actually was chatting to someone
Mm.
today in
Yeah.
retail this morning before the webinar, and actually, we started coining a phrase. You know how there already is conversational commerce, where you
Yeah.
talk, say you want to buy something on a website and you have a conversation like a personal shopper. I actually think we're going to get conversational merchandising and conversational
Yeah.
buying. I really believe that, you'll start talking to your computer, and
Yeah.
even with something like Pixel, you'll get it to do the attribution, and then you'll say, well, sorry, those few fields look a bit wrong. Can you tweak those? Or
Yes.
can you learn? Or the tone of voice needs to be this. Can you change the tone of voice? We'll be talking. We won't be keying in parameters. And I can see that with something like assortment planning. Why wouldn't the designer, the buyer, and the merchandiser all sit together with the assortment planning tool being the fourth person in the room, and they start having a conversation with it, and it starts building their assortment for them. I think that with something like Pixel, you see the attribution so quickly, and that takes you so long to do on a spreadsheet. It's just amazing, and then you're
Mm.
finessing it rather than putting it in, and you're
Yeah.
then being able to launch products quickly. And I think that the new talent that's coming into the business is going to expect those types of conversational tools and
Yeah.
AI tools.
Yeah, yeah, really great that you mentioned those because there's really a shift of mindset. And as you said, there's people are respecting now conversational shopping. Like we all want our personal assistants, and now they're cheap, that we can get to. But also for the back end, what you mentioned for merchandising, for buying. Actually, that's the new thing on the roadmap that we're doing now. It's conversational setup of the attributes, and tailoring it down to exactly fitting your taxonomy to your product data structure. So indeed, and I was at the conference, the apparel merchandise planning last year, and I really like when one of the panelists said we need to look at AI as our next colleague, right? Like, because
Yeah.
there was a topic of being whether should be scared of AI, new technology, people losing their job. And I really love that point of view, that AI is your next colleague, is your assistant, right? Like it can really help you build things. And what I really liked is that you mentioned all these kind of specialized conversational tools, right? Because we also see people talking about, okay, ChatGPT can solve everything, or Microsoft Copilot can solve everything, but it cannot be that you use Copilot for shopping just as well as if there is an AI shopping assistant, right? Tailored exactly to match and search and give you the results in the format that you need. Also, it will be the conversational merchandiser, AI assistant. It will be specialized. Just as us humans, we specialize in different areas. There will be specialized AI tools coming for different products and for different problems.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, one large language model is not going to work for everybody. And I think still the inputs, and we all know this with using these tools, the better inputs we put, the better outputs we get. I always, AI is great, and I heard this story. When the use cases for AI were limited, I heard this great story. This is probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, where Amazon had used AI to filter resumes, and to look at who they should interview. And they'd given it 10 years worth of history and 10 years worth of promotions and how people had progressed in the organization. And they then gave it all the current resumes that they'd been got every day and who should they interview. And it decided not to interview women
Oh yeah.
because their history hadn't had a lot of women, and of course it just knew it as a data field. It knew nothing else about that scenario. And I think that a lot of things have progressed since then. But I think that what I do worry about people's jobs, and as you said, what I worry about is people being able to come in at more junior. If we take out all the admin, how do people even start in retail?
Yeah.
But I think that what I loved when I was a merchandiser was mentoring people and training people, and that human element of really embedding people into retailing, getting them to love retailing, getting them to love trading. And that human element of teams together, the buyer, the designer, and especially I think with what Pixel helps with. I've always talked recently about merchandising needing to get much closer to customer, and the customer and the marketing team and the buying and the merchandising team and the design team know loads about the product, and the marketing and digital team know loads about the customer. And if we've now got time to conversationally talk about how we put products on our website or other people's websites with the best attribution, the best search, then those conversational commerce conversations that consumers are having will be so much better and so much more fruitful. We all know when we've put stuff into Google or ChatGPT, I want some wide leg trousers, you get 20,000, 50,000 things back, and how do you go through that? And I think whether people are thinking of buying a solution or building a solution, I think they've really got to think of that conversational human element and getting the AI to be that assistant to really support the decisions, but then allow the time. I mean, in retail, no one's got any time. Everyone's so much busier. So many more products are launched so quickly. So many more channels are having to be looked at with such smaller teams. There needs to be tools that support the human and gives the time back to the human element of retailing. Because at the end of the day, especially fashion retailing, it's an emotional decision.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
don't want to get disconnected from that emotional decision just because you're spending all your time on data and
Yeah.
trying to get data in the right format.
Yeah, and it's great that you mentioned both data and the conversational, because what we actually hear from many retailers we talk lately is, okay, we want to get ready for the conversational shopping, right? Like everybody's aware they're already AI assisted. People are even shopping through Chat GPT and cloud and all these
Mm.
tools. And I've actually read a statistic that over 55% of now traffic and how people are shopping and coming through AI assistants, which is a huge number. So there is a bit of a now panic. Okay, how do we get these assistants recommending our product? And what we always advise is product data, right? Because these AI tools, they just scan the internet, they see what they need. You need to fill in a lot of attributes describing the products in a more detailed way, because as you mentioned, when somebody just types in wide legs, it's just not enough. And with conversational commerce, you have a sub question to ask and a sub question to ask. Okay, but I want these wide leg trousers for, I know, a night out at a cinema, or you want it for a wedding. So then there's a specific type of data points that you need to fill in and get ready for the conversational commerce. So it's really a trend that we see, and I really love that also merchandiser and people within retail are becoming more and more aware of it.
Well, I think that what we try and talk to all our customers about and our retailers about is digital first has got to be it. It was put the customer in the center of everything you do, but most of the time, most consumers, when they first interact with a brand, it might be in a store, but rarely. It's usually on a website. Someone's told them, they've seen something on TikTok, or so the first port of call, the first window of your brand is your website. And I think historically with product data, especially, people have thought, well, we need all of this for what we're going to do in a store and what we're going to send to a store. And actually it's what the consumers going to see? And I think that the art of that conversation. But coming back to build or buy, you were talking about your roadmap, you're looking at conversational on there. It brings back the point that I made earlier, that if you build it yourself, you and your IT team have got to be aware of all these trends that are coming, have got to be aware where the consumer's moving to, have got to be aware of IT changes, ChatGPT version 5, version 6, version 7, whatever it is. Like, we have to be aware that there's Windows 12 or Windows 13 or an iPhone 16, and does it work on iOS, blah, 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 and is it mobile optimized? And, there are so many platforms that everyone works on. I mean, I was surprised that, WhatsApp didn't work on an iPad until very recently, but there are so many, if you build it yourself, there are so many things you have to keep aware of and have to research and have to make sure that your system is upgraded to work on the latest mobile phone or on the latest device or on the latest Windows platform. But with a software company, they have that responsibility to make sure it works on all of those platforms, and to make sure, I look now and so much of commerce and so much of what we do, and I think so much even of merchandising is going to be done on a mobile device, whereas before it was always a laptop. So are all the systems that your teams use, before COVID, most retail teams were in a head office all the time. Every day we were in a head office because you had to be together, especially in fashion. It's and now we've got the hybrid of working. People are at home. People are using their phone. They are using devices. You've got to make sure that any software you deploy to those teams internally can work on any of those types of solutions. And also we all travel a lot more. We go out, especially if we're competitive. We might be competitive shopping, we might see some products, we might want to change the attribution of some of our products, and if you can do all that mobily, but the onus then is on the IT team, if you build something yourself, to know what the latest and greatest is of all those new technology stacks, and they come out so quickly.
Yes,
I mean, look how quick has ChatGPT come out, and really started to be used, and people, as you said, people are using it now as a search engine for products rather than Google, let's say, not just I want to go on holiday to the Maldives, where's the best place to go, so I think that it would be so hard for an IT team to keep up. I mean, it must be hard for you as a software company to keep up with
but it's our job, right? It's our primary
yeah
job to make sure that the software is there, and also what are the best practices, because what we actually see, besides being a software company, we also need to be, in a way, a consultancy and AI partner, right? Like, because when they come about product data, we need to tell them, okay, this is the solution, but this is the best way to use it, because we also follow the best practices. As you mentioned, you might ask ChatGPT for a vacation on the Maldives, but now you're asking, okay, what is the best t-shirt that is, that my child can wear to a soccer practice, but also, for climbing. And you need to have these keywords on your product detail page that is for climbing, that you can wear it for a soccer game, so that it shows up. Because, as you said, like, the website should be, the first window to your customers, but currently you should also start thinking the website being the window to the AI assistants, because it will be the AI assistants shopping for your customers. So
yeah
there needs to be a bit of a shift of mindset. Okay, the website needs to be optimized with data for the AI assistants to find my product and bring it to my customers.
Well, I wonder, we all talk about SEO optimization and
Yeah,
search engine optimization, but are we going to have a different phrase? Is it going to
yeah,
be AI optimization, AI assistant
yeah,
optimization? Because, yes, Google is a search engine. Do we classify ChatGPT as a search engine at the moment? I don't know, but
yeah,
that's where we've got to go, isn't it? That any assistant tool that
yeah,
people are using, whether that's Siri on their phone or, Alexa or any of these things. I mean, look, Meta have just started having conversational on WhatsApp, and
yeah,
just off your phone on WhatsApp, you could say, I want to go on holiday to the Maldives, into WhatsApp, and it will give you some stuff back. So there are all these AI platforms. So are we going to change that term, and it's not going to be
yeah.
SEO anymore? It's going to be something else.
Yeah, there are actually two new terms. One is answer engine optimization, so for answers, and another one is generative engine optimization for the AI
Mm.
model. So it's already there. But yeah,
Mm.
going back to the topic, I would really, because you mentioned there are so many things to do when you if you decide to build your own solution. What would you say are the hidden costs of building your own solution that you could not maybe see or anticipate at the beginning when you need to decide on whether you should build or buy?
I think sometimes, as I said, you think it's quicker and cheaper,
Mm,
but actually you've got to have the hidden cost. Probably you don't think about is the cost of the employment. You've got to have some really decent
mm,
developers who and if you think of software companies have a large pool of developers to come from. You might have quite a small pool of developers to come from. And if they're doing lots and lots of projects, it actually might elongate the time that you're
mm,
doing it. But also, I think that it's what we talked about. It's that upgrade. That upgrade costs of so many of those hidden costs that it's
mm,
not just, it might cost you X to build initially, but then you don't know what those ongoing costs are going to be. With a
mm,
software vendor, you know you're paying a SaaS fee or a support fee, and you know what the costs are. But
mm,
if whatever platform or technology you've written it in suddenly gets changed, suddenly gets updated, and you've got to do a whole rewrite, I see people who have built their own solutions and they leave the platform for quite a long time, and then maybe it's like a re-implementation to put it on the latest technology, because all of a
mm,
sudden it doesn't work on the latest thing, and actually the latest thing is a big change. That's a
mm,
hidden cost that you don't realize it. And if you don't keep up with the latest technology and keeping up, you have
mm,
a big cost somewhere down the line, or a re-implementation where some of the code that you wrote doesn't survive.
mm,
Because I think quite often when retailers build something themselves, it's a very tactical, we'll build it for now. They think they'll
mm.
replace it, they don't, and then they still have to keep maintaining it, and then they forget what that cost is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, great. Well, I think we have 4 minutes till the end, so maybe I would just ask you to share, like maybe like a key takeaways, or a few things of for the people in the audience, whether they're brands or retailers, when they need to decide and make a decision whether they build or buy, whether that's from a strategic point of view, cost, or technology. What would be your key takeaways for everyone?
Yeah, I would go back to what I said before about the test and try,
Yeah.
and build might be a good option for you, but actually put it into the vendor selection process and
Mhm.
try it as well. And if your IT team, want believe they can build it, which is the first thing, they have to believe they can build it. If they can build
Mhm.
it, get them to run alongside the vendors and show you what they can do. And that's how to test the build or buy. I think whichever scenario you go for, and I'm always going to say this because this is where we've helped a lot, is always think about the change management and the use cases. Make sure
Yeah.
that you've got really defined use cases up front, and also really think about the data, and then really believe how you're going to take users on the journey. Because technology is technology. It's people and process that bring it to life. And this is all these solutions should be about efficiency and helping people do their job better. And if it isn't going to do their job better, they will go back to spreadsheets. And so
Mm.
you've got to take them on that journey of that, they might know this legacy system, or they might know these spreadsheets, and actually this is a much better way of doing things, and you're going to take into account industry best practice and take them on that journey.
Yeah, yeah, great. Okay, so I see we have one question, so maybe we can do a quick answer to this one. And then that is, if we decide to buy, what's the best way to evaluate whether a vendor's AI actually work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it comes back to the try and test. You've done it, Svetlana, with a number of customers that you've dealt with. put something in. Yeah, it is very hard in vendor selection. I liken it to buying a house. You don't see it for very long. It's an emotive decision.
Mm.
You never really can do the due diligence compared to the price, you know. And like with buying a house, they might have some lovely pictures on the wall, and actually, when you buy the house, there's a big hole behind the picture. But I think
Mm.
that you have to use that community and that references. And I think that talking to other people that have used that software before
Oh,
will
yeah.
give you the comfort blanket that the AI does work. But also, as well, I think it's, you said it before, I think buy a piece of software from a vendor that you have a really good cultural fit from. And if there
Mhm.
are things then that need to be done, the vendor will do it. You know, you guys at Pixel are very flexible, and you will build and customize things, or build things, or put things in the roadmap. I think that I always say to people, it's a really hard thing to score on vendor selection, but
Yeah.
cultural fit and
Oh, yeah.
partnership and collaboration is a big part of
Mm.
it. And if there are some gaps, which there might be, then you work together to fill those in.
Oh, that's a really great tip. I never thought of it that culture fit should be there. What we always try is actually go and meet with our
Yeah.
clients in person, because this is when you get the best feeling if you know there's a good relationship, and it's just so important. I think the most success we had with clients are those that we've built such a great relationships. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so I think we're out of time now. There's one more question, but yeah, I would just say for everybody in the audience, I will share my Calendly link in the comments. So if you want any free consultation, or just chat or have more questions, feel free. So you can book a 30-minute slot with me. And Charlotte, if they want to talk with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. My surname obviously is quite unusual, Kula-Przezwanski, so there isn't another one. So I'm sure you'll be able to find me. Or otherwise, maybe Svetlana, when we share the recording, we can share my email details
Yeah.
with the group, and people can get in contact with me that way. But more than happy to chat to people about some of their challenges, and whether these types of solutions can help.
Yes, great. So, yeah, if you want, yeah, some of the questions that we didn't manage to answer, yeah, please reach out to Charlotte or me, and we'll be happy to. I would just want to say thank you for all for tuning in and spending time with us. I really hope that this session gave you valuable takeaways. We'll definitely also share the key points via email. And also keep an eye for our next AI and e-commerce talk session. We'll be announcing the topic very soon. Again, thanks, Charlotte, for joining, and it was really interesting discussion.
Thanks, Svetlana. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.